What is going on, investors? Hopefully you guys are having a great day out there. Time to talk about one of my most favorite companies, Amazon.com. Ticker symbol AMZN. This company just reported earnings after the bell, made some major news at the CEO spot. So we'll definitely talk about that. We'll jump into the numbers. Now, Amazon does something interesting. They lead their investor kind of presentation with a statement of cash flows. And so we'll talk about what that means and how you can evaluate the company from that sense. But we'll go over the balance sheet and the statement of operations as well. Then finally, we'll jump over to the stock chart. This stock is making a move. We'll see if it makes a big enough move to really push us up above these all-time highs. That's something that we'll focus on when we jump over to the stock chart. So we see here in the after hours, stocks popping just a little bit. A lot of those gains, the stock has actually been on a nice little uptrend over the last week or so. And so some of those gains have been forward. Full disclosure, I own 4 Amazon shares. It's one of my best performing stocks. I've got about $13,000 in this. I think I've got about 50,000 in this account. I'm not saying this is a good idea to do, but I've got a fair amount of exposure to Amazon in my retirement account. Not saying that to flex by any mean. I'm just saying that I am somewhat biased towards this company. I'll do my best to keep things right down the middle on this evaluation. Jeff Bezos is stepping down as Amazon CEO in Q3. Andy Jassy will take the reins. And I thought this was interesting. So Andy Jassy is actually the Amazon Web Services head. He actually founded that division, I think, way back in 2003. He has been with Amazon, I think, since 1997. He's one of the early employees at the company. He's been with them a long time. So I actually thought it was interesting that Amazon is going to put someone that's AWS in charge of the whole company rather than like a product head or somebody that's more on the e-commerce side. We'll see how that changes Amazon in the future. Obviously, Bezos will still be around. I think he's going to be like an executive chairman. I'm sure he's somebody that will always have his influence on this company. But I thought it was interesting that they went with Mr. Jassy in terms of AWS instead of like an e-commerce guy. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is Amazon crossed $100 billion in revenue for the very first time, and their revenue on the e-commerce side is starting to just explode. And now Amazon Web Services, still a great business, still churns out a significant amount of profit for the company. But when we talk about its revenue at $12.75 billion versus just North American sales coming in at $75 billion, this is an e-commerce company first and foremost, although obviously technology and Amazon Web Services plays a large role in the success of Amazon.com. Now, when we jump over to the financials, we're going to talk about how Amazon leads with cash flows, and what they want you to do is evaluate this company from net cash provided by operating activities. And we see in the most recent quarter, that's a $30 billion in cash flow. Okay, you don't see that every day, believe me. And that's $66 billion. They had $30 billion in cash flow in the quarter. In 12 months, they had $66 billion. So it just shows you what a great quarter the fourth quarter is for Amazon. They get the vast majority of their cash flows flowing in that fourth quarter. Major quarter for them. Now, so here's the deal though. You can analyze Amazon from cash flow. So price to cash flow, they're at about 30 times. Okay. And it has been much higher than that, like 40, 45 times price to cash flow. This stock is actually right in this range where I guess you could say it's fair valued from the sense of price to cash flow. Okay, you could look at it price to sales in other sense and get another sense of evaluation, but I just wanted to show you this since Amazon does lead off with their cash flow. So what they do here, they show you the cash and cash equivalents up at front. That's not necessarily something that's always on a cash flow statement, but what is you pull down a net income. When we get to statement of operations, it's 2 or 3 slides lower. We pull down this net income. We see here for the last 3 months, 19 over 20, we earned $7.2 billion worth of net income. Net income is a GAAP figure. It records figures and money that's not necessarily cash flowing out of the business. Things like depreciation, stock-based compensation are factored as cash cost, and that factors into your net income. So what Amazon wants to show you is, yes, we earned $7.2 billion. In the previous quarter, we earned $3.3 billion. Whoa, hello, that's a big jump. And then see, for the 12 months, we made 11.5 in 19, $21 billion in net income. Hello, that is absolutely huge. Now, you can add back in depreciation, which they do, stock-based compensation, some of this other stuff actually gets subtracted out of it. Come down into $30.4 billion in cash flow provided by the operating activity. So it's just showing you that in the previous year, we did 20, we're $10 billion higher. And this is just a phenomenal quarter because you take a look for the full year, they did $66 billion in cash flow. And in one quarter, they did about half of that. So it's just showing you what an amazing quarter it was for Amazon. Now, the other things we can take a look at on this is take a look at purchase of property and equipment. For the year, Amazon spent $40 billion, that is with a B, $40 billion on purchase of property and equipment. This is a company that is reinvesting their money. If you don't like dividends, you don't want to have stock buybacks, I tell you what, Amazon's the company, and this is why I'm significantly overweight Amazon. Number one, I'm young enough to kind of watch this story play out. Number two, I like companies that are this aggressive. They take every last dollar that they have and they put it right back into the business. I love that. I don't need a dividend. I don't need a share buyback. I want you to spend the money on the business and grow it bigger and bigger. And that is what Amazon is doing. Now, we see they do have some long-term debt. We took on some debt this year, primarily the pandemic kind of, most companies kind of exercised that option this year because they never, I think what a lot of executives thought is maybe the credit markets tighten up. And so they all kind of drew on like a credit line or any kind of facility that they might have had. And Amazon was no difference. It took on about $10.5 billion worth of debt. Looks like they paid off like 3 or 4. So, net, they took on more debt. But when we get down to the balance sheet, I'll show you it's not really that big of a deal. Now, moving on to the statement of operations, this is where you'll find that net income number. We had that 7.2 and we got 21 billion for the full year, but I want to show you up here. So we've got our 3 months ended here, 19 over 20, 12 months, 19 over 20. We've got our net product sales went from 50.5 billion all the way up to I can't believe I'm saying this, $71 billion. That is just unbelievable. We see our net service sales went from 36 to 54. That gives us a grand total of $125 billion in sales, not in a lifetime, not in a year, in 3 months. Amazon got $125 billion worth of sales. You can add that up for like how much of that sales per day. It's an incredible amount of money flowing through Amazon. We see here for the full year, we ended up making 386. That is $100 billion, over $100 billion over the previous year. Tell you what, you grow your net sales $100 billion in a year. It's unbelievable. I mean, this is just phenomenal. Now, that's not the full story with Amazon. Tell you what, if they had the margins of Microsoft or margins of even like an Apple, this company would be worth 10 times as much. Okay, they don't. This is not a high margin business. We've got our cost of sales, fulfillment costs, technology, marketing, general administrative. So we get this total operating expenses. We see for 2020 in the most recent quarter, we spent 118 billion to make 125. So again, we spend a lot of money. Not all investors are comfortable with this type of business. I personally am. I don't mind spending this kind of money when you get this kind of return and you get the growth on top of that. We see for the full year, we spent $363 billion. They spent that to make 386. So again, our operating income comes here at $6.8 billion for the quarter and $22.9 billion for the last 12 months. Really strong. Obviously going to continue to improve because we see last year we were at 14.5. We basically bolted on over $8 billion. $8 billion. That is a lot. Okay. That's like, $2 billion a quarter that they were able to bolt on to operating income in the most previous year. If they're able to do that again, then you're north of $30 billion in operating income for the full year in 2021. We'll see what happens. I did see on the press release, you might ask, this 125 billion number for the quarter obviously includes a lot of holiday sales and things like that. And so you might wonder, well, is the next quarter, Q1, going to be north of $100 billion? And it looked like Amazon did guide for over $100 billion in Q1, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. So moving down through this, we got earnings per share, $14. We earned $41 per share. Just absolutely phenomenal. Everything looking solid there. Now, I wanted to cycle down through here. I wanted to show you here now where the concentration is. So obviously Amazon is growing tremendously, and you'd like to see them churn out probably a little bit more operating income as time goes on. I think we're all comfortable. This company is going to have phenomenal sales. Now it's about that operating income. We see here in North America, we're just growing our sales. I mean, we went from 170 up to 236. That's for 12 months. And you see operating income was $7 billion last year, and it ticked up to about 1.6 to $8.6 billion. It ticked up over $1 billion just in the most recent quarter, from 1.9 billion up to 2.9. Now, that's not the full story. Let's take a look. I remember on our last time we analyzed Amazon, we talked about how they were at a tipping point with their international sales, and they were a tipping point for profit. Take a look. For the last 3 months in 19, we lost $616 million. This time around, we made $363 million. That should be exciting for investors that Amazon has reached a tipping point with international, that it appears now to be a profitable business, and I would expect that going forward. We see last year in 2019, we lost $1.7 billion in our international sales. This year, we turned a $717 million profit. That is phenomenal. That is likely going to help Amazon stock going forward, because North America, I wouldn't say it's tapped out. We grew from 170 to 236 on the top line in sales, but we saw that operating income went from 7 to 8.6. While that's phenomenal growth, it is not the exponential growth that we're actually seeing here in the international, where you went from 1.7 billion loss up to a $700 million gain. I would expect that to continue into 2021. Now, AWS coming down here, again, the head of AWS is now the head of Amazon, or going to be the head of Amazon come Q3. We see this business, it's slowing a little bit because you have Microsoft, and you've got Google, and you've got other companies out there, Oracle and other ones out there that are playing in this space. And it's just, there's customers out there, and there's plenty of them, but they have lots of options. It's not like maybe 4, 5, 6 years ago where AWS was one of the biggest players in town. Now there's quite a few. We see we went from operating income side up $1 billion. Okay, that is super solid. We see for the full year, we went up, oh man, that's about $4 billion. So everything looking good in terms of the AWS side. Everything looks strong. The sales across the board look strong. I think what you're looking for as an investor is the international. You want to make sure this is continuing to grow, because the operating income just turned positive on the international sales. And if that continues, that should keep the momentum going for Amazon. Now, finally, we get over to the balance sheet, and we'll jump over the stock chart here in a second. We see cash and cash equivalents here of $42 billion. We got another $42 billion in marketable securities. So that's a cool $84 billion with a B, $1 billion. We've got some inventory, looks about the same. So our assets ticked up quite a bit by like about $90 billion, but most of it looks like it's ticked up here in cash. And we've got quite a bit of additional property and equipment that flowed through on that cash flow side, where we showed that they spent about $40 billion in the year. Now, long-term debt here went from 23 to 31. But that's not that much. I mean, keep in mind, we've got $84 billion here. We've got another $23 billion in inventory. We got another 20, call it 25 in receivables. And we've got all this plant, property, and equipment. This is a very financially healthy company. I don't think I'm breaking any news on that sense. Now, let's jump over the stock chart. Let's see what's going on here. So this one's interesting. So we made some highs up here on Amazon at about, we'll call that 35.50. Now, Amazon has been range bound for 4 months. This stock has been range bound between 32.85 and 30, we'll call that 3,100. Amazon has been stuck between 3,100 and we'll call that 32. You know what? I'm just going to bump this up to make it a round number, 3,300. We've basically been in a $200, share price range for like 4 months with Amazon. So it finally broke out above 3,300. And now it's what it's going to happen to it when it's up here. Will Amazon kind of hesitate up here? Take a look. We broke 3,300 here. We broke it here. We broke it here. And the stock sold off. And what will happen this time around? Can it push up? In my opinion, Amazon's going to need to push up to at least 30, we'll call it 3,500, in that range, give or take a couple percentage points. It needs to push up to $3,500 on some significant momentum. Otherwise, these sellers are likely to step in. Also, you have technical indicators indicating this stock is overbought. We'll see what happens with this one. I'm not necessarily, obviously I'm overweight Amazon already, so that's the reason why I show you my position in relation to the portfolio side. I'm a little overweight Amazon already. I wouldn't necessarily run in and jump in on this spot. A pullback to 3,300 if you want to start a position in Amazon, especially a fractional share one where you're kind of inching in. 3,300, a pullback to 3,300. This 3,300 should act as some support. If it doesn't act as support, you should have the 50-day moving average, which should be closer to 3,200 at that point, and then obviously below that 3,100. I would anticipate Amazon, with the performance that they just showed, should stay within this range. You should be able to accumulate shares if you want this one. If you want to play an options play and kind of play this sideways, I don't got any problem with that. If we get any major market correction, and cross your fingers, if you're kind of long, you want to go long this market even more, well, we would have a major market correction, and this stock could potentially pull down to 2,900, which in my opinion would be a full share allocation for someone like me, even when you're tremendously overweight this one, because I don't need to go through these numbers again. Company is financially healthy on the asset side, financially healthy on the sales mix side. They have a nice little sales mix and just absolutely phenomenal sales. And we're growing that operating income. And then finally, $30 billion in positive cash flow in a quarter. Yeah, I take that too. So that's Amazon for you. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Be back again very soon, including our Friday recap show where we talk about the FANG stocks, including Amazon, every week on Friday. Come back and join us then. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck with your investments.